This is the 007 Debriefings. I'm Intelligence Officer Wiz.
And I'm Weapons Specialist Zero.
Zero, how you doing this week?
Doing all right. The project at my day job is possibly going to be done early if all the stars line up, so kind of excited for that.
So how does it feel being an operative in a terrorist organization? And I know you can't tell me exactly what you're planning. Well, I guess you can't tell me the target anyway, but how does your day and day go when it comes to being in this organization? Tell me.
Skulk around and not get caught.
We are going to ended up on a list, aren't we? Okay, let's go past this. So we are here to comb the files of MI6 to discuss the cinematic adventures of one James Bond. This week, Spectre. Zero. This is like the redheaded stepchild of the Craig-era Bond film. We're going to discuss why that is, because I think we both kind of feel the same way about it. Have you ever watched a film from a series that did so poorly that it made the previous iterations of those films look worse in comparison?
Not with a series of movies, but there was a season of a television show that was completely ruined by this. This is going to be more on the anime side of things. So there was I want to say it was the second season of the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. There's this one theme where they get into the summer semester and they basically repeat this episode, but from like different perspectives. And it's basically supposed to be kind of like a Groundhog Day sort of trope. But they go and do this thing for way too many episodes. I think it was called Hateful Eight was what this string of episodes was called, where basically it's just like the main character, Haruhi, she's essentially a god. If she does not like you, she will just make you disappear. She will just erase your existence. Basically, one of the main characters, he doesn't care. He's just like, you can make people disappear, whatever. I don't fucking give a care. And she has so much fun with him in the summer, and we're not wanting to kind of move on to the fall semester, that basically she causes a time loop. The male lead, he basically notices something's up, like I think by the second time cycle, which is like the second episode of this cycle. And I was just like, okay. When the second time happened, I was just like, okay, that's fair enough, because maybe you didn't notice the first time, and then second time you're like, hey, hold on a second, this is deja vu. And then it happens like several other times, and I was just like, God, please stop. And it was actually funny too, because most Japanese anime fans are pretty polite, but this string of same episode just being repeated multiple times from like different camera angles and stuff like that annoyed fans of Haruhi so much that they wrote into Kyoto Animation. They're just like, dear fucking God, stop this. Move the fuck on. When the episode preview came up of the cycle's been broken, everyone was just like, thank fuck.
I feel that way with Game of Thrones. I'm one of the people who think that the last season of Game of Thrones ruined the entire series. It's basically because in Game of Thrones, they should have taken more time to develop those characters, make the ending work, but because they rushed the entire ending, it actually hurt the rest of the series to me. I actually tried watching it again, and I kept saying to myself, yeah, but I know how this ends, so this is kind of pointless. And that's the worst thing you can do for a series of books, novels, movies, TV shows, is that if you make an iteration that then negates the forward progress that was made in the previous seasons, you really fucked up. Let us get into the mission objectives for Spectre. We're going to go through all the different types of elements of the film. And first, if we're going to go to 007, which is James Bond, played by Daniel Craig.
This one, they're going back to the trope of a rogue agent, James Bond. He creates yet another incident, and M pretty much just puts him on ice again. He's once again the brutal Bond that he is, but this time they sort of went with some of the womanizing tropes that you would expect from Connery. It kind of felt like it just spit on the last couple movies. It was like, oh, God, why does this feel like we're going into tropes that Connery and possibly Brosnan were known for? It's just like, oh, God damn it, guys.
Honestly, though, I kind of excuse it a little bit because in the way that they interpret Craig's Bond in this is that he doesn't do it because, hey, I'm bored and you're here, so why not? It's more like, I need fucking information, and the only way I can do this is nail this chick, and that's what I gotta do. But I do understand where you're coming from here, because they spent, I think, 2 or 3 movies saying this is not really how he operates, but he does it in case he has to. But in this movie, he kind of dives right into it with Monica Bellucci's character in this movie. So I can see why you have a bit of a problem with that.
It's an okay performance, but it's definitely, in my opinion, a bit weaker than what we've seen in the last couple movies.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues that I have with this version of Bond with Craig is that it seems to go back to the formula of the other 20 or so movies, which counteracts exactly what makes this Bond so special, is that they decided to take away that formula and make him to a complete character, but it seems like they're trying to retrofit him back into that formula, and I don't think it really works very well. Craig does a good job as Bond in this film, but it does seem like the writers are just going in at this point being like, all right, well, we don't have many other ideas, so let's just go back to the well and see where this goes. Again, Craig does okay with what he has, but when it compares to the other 3 films, it almost feels like they're throwing away all the growth that was in those 3 films.
It definitely felt like, one, it spit on the last couple movies, but also just any character growth that we came to love from this new sort of more respectful to the original vision of the novels. It just kind of threw it all out the window. It's just a real damn shame because I love the last 3 movies just with Craig just being this scrappy Bond that is just having to pull a solution just out of nothing in some cases. And he's brutal, he's ruthlessly efficient about it. The one motivation that he has is the duty he has to his country. With this one, it's just kind of like, throw that all the way out the window. People like Connery and Brosnan, right? Let's try to retrofit some of that stuff back in. It's just like, no.
I agree with you. I think that they're taking what was so great about the first 3 movies, specifically Casino Royale, and it's slowly trying to get that stuff away to just fit him into that formula, and I think it does a disservice. All right, Zero, so let's get into villains, and the villain that we have is oh god, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, played by Christoph Waltz.
He starts off kind of interesting, especially when Bond first encounters him at the Spectre meeting out in Italy and everything. Because Bond thinks he got the one-up because he stole the ring off of the one villain in the beginning sequence and everything. And he's dressed up in a suit and all that. So, so Bond thinks he's got the leg up on the situation. So he attends this meeting, spies on what they're all saying. And then Blofeld kind of shows him that I knew this would happen. It's kind of a real interesting moment because for the most part, Bond seems like he's been on the up and up. Blofeld just kind of goes, hey, what took you so long? I've been waiting for you. And then you see like everyone in the meeting just kind of face Bond and it's just like, oh shit. Blofeld's been paying attention all this time. Oh shit. And then shows up towards the end and at the resort out in the middle of the desert and everything and kind of shows off that he's sort of a master manipulator by showing off some footage to try to turn Dr. Swan against him. Then he kind of goes to cartoonish supervillainy with the torture scene. And then towards the end sequence over at the old MI6 headquarters and everything, just setting up the old building with just booby traps and everything, and just like, oh god, just you start off with something interesting and then you just develop Blofeld into like cartoonish tomfoolery. What a fucking waste.
A waste is the best way you can put this. But first off, let's talk about why they would bring Ernst Stavro Blofeld back. And for one note, I think it was a good idea. It would make sense if you're going to reboot the series that you bring back Blofeld, because Blofeld is probably one of the most well-known of the villains when it comes to Bond, and one that is considered to be a rival of sorts, especially in the beginning Bond movies. So that makes sense to me why they would say, you know what, if we're going to reboot this, we need Spectre again. We need Blofeld again. And I agree. I think that's a great idea. Here's the problem. Spectre in the original Bonds with Connery was kind of goofy, and it was treated as goofy as well because no one really took Bond movies seriously. They were goofy, fun entertainment. And Blofeld being that way was like, yeah, okay, it fits with the vibe of the film. To me, that makes sense. In the reboot, they're trying to make it much more gritty, serious, much more grounded in reality. But for some reason, they didn't take a look at it and go, okay, what are the elements of Spectre and Blofeld from the old movies that we need to rip out, and how can we fashion it into this Bond? And that's what they did not do in this one. When do you first meet Blofeld? In a meeting with a bunch of people talking about all the crimes they are perpetrating all across the world, which is the exact same thing they did the Connery version, which we both pointed out was kind of silly back then too, but it fits with the theme, I guess. To have it dark, brooding, and really dangerous looking in a very seedy corner of Rome, and then having to do that again. What do you think about the entire thing with Spectre as a whole and how they represented Spectre in this movie?
It's just, once again, another scheming organization. Granted, it wasn't like super buttoned down like we saw back in one of the earlier movies where it just looked like a business meeting where they're talking about P&L statements and stuff like that. But we don't really have much insight other than, okay, they're just a bunch of schemers.
And then the other thing, too, is if this group is supposed to be the group that has been causing all of the stress in the world, which is what they portrayed them as, don't you think they just made them incompetent because Bond basically took care of them 3 times? When it's eventually found out that Blofeld and Spectre caused all the 3 things that happened in the last 3 movies, at that point, I'm looking at this going, oh, so you guys suck, really, don't you? Bond beat you 3 times. But what I think is the worst thing that they did, and one of the dumbest twists that I've ever seen in a movie, well, there are other dumb twists, but this is one of the dumbest. Making Blofeld his brother. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you make him his brother? There was literally no point to that whatsoever.
Yeah, kind of playing it up as, just he's the adopted brother. It was just like, you guys just had to kind of really lean into the whole, oh, Spectre's so under your nose, you would never notice. And then to finally make the big reveal, have you forgotten who I am? I'm basically your adopted brother. And it's just like, oh, we're really leaning into that. This is so obvious you missed it because you're an idiot. Oh, God, just stop.
Yeah, I just realized something when you were talking. In Austin Powers 3, didn't they reveal that Dr. Evil and Austin Powers were brothers?
I forget, it's been so long.
Okay, I may have dreamed that up, but if that's the case, then they just took from Austin Powers and brought it into Bond, which was like, what the fuck is this? I gotta be honest though, I think Waltz does a passable job in this. Waltz is a very good act, but this villain is so bad and has so many elements wrong with it that it actually hurts the previous 3 films. And that really takes something. That really is just like, wow, how could you screw up that badly?
I definitely feel that way. And like I said, it starts off so interesting. And I was just like, oh man, this is kind of a fun reveal, throwing it back to Bond and basically going, at least in the business meaning of, hey, I've been watching you all this while, and kind of taking Bond completely off guard because, again, Bond thought he'd leg up. He was just like, sweet, awesome. I infiltrated this meeting. I'm going to be able to spy on everyone, and I'm going to get the drop on everyone. To be completely disarmed by this whole, oh, yeah, I knew you were coming. I saw it from a mile away. It was just like, what a way to disarm Bond and, just really throw him on the back step. As the movie went on, he became more and more silly and a Saturday morning cartoon supervillainy, and it was like, oh, damn it, guys, you had something good. You had something good.
Yeah.
And you just threw it out, and it's a complete waste.
All right, Zero, so let's get into the Bond girl, which is Dr. Madeline Swan, played by Léa Seydoux.
Léa Seydoux's fantastic. It was kind of interesting having her being the portrayal of Mr. White's daughter and everything. The way she's portrayed is she just hates any sort of this, like, murdering and scheming sort of stuff. When Bond encounters a dying Mr. White, he's just like, yeah, my daughter wants to have nothing to do with me. But, just, I pissed off the wrong people, and now apparently they want to put her in as fair game, and that's completely wrong. We're not supposed to target women and children. This is bull crap. And then, of course, when Bond meets her, when she gets to the psychological evaluation question, she's like, so what do you do for work? You left the field empty. And Bond's basically like, I left it empty because it kind of scares people when I put down what I do for work, but yeah, I'm an assassin. And my God, she just has the most visceral reaction, like she's touched a hot stove or something, and she's just like, get out now. And I was just like, wow, yeah, just Mr. White was not kidding that she absolutely hates anyone involved with wet work. Holy shit. It kind of has an interesting dynamic because in the beginning, just Bond saves her, and she just absolutely detests him, especially knowing that he's involved in the business of wet work. She's just like, yeah, I'm only cooperating with you because you're probably the only reason I'm being kept alive. Where it gets kind of weird is the train sequence. After just they end up beating up Mr. Hinks and getting him off the train and everything, all of a sudden they go back to their train car and it's just, all right, time to make sweet music even though we almost got murdered.
I understand completely why Bond would fall in love with Dr. Swan. He hasn't been emotionally open with since Vesper. He has bedded women, but it was made clear that he's only doing it for the mission objective, nothing more. But by the time he meets Swan, she's a psychiatrist who can pinpoint exactly what's wrong with him and why he is the way he is and what he needs to do to heal. In that case, I understand exactly why Bond would fall for her. Also, she's played by Léa Seydoux, who is fucking stunning. I mean, God, yes, of course. My issue is, why the fuck would Dr. Swan fall in love with him? I don't understand this. Like, she openly hates her father because of the danger that he put her in. And then, like you said, when Bond tries to help initially, she outright rejects him because of the connection to her father. And it's only sticking around because it's the only way she can survive. The only thing you could really say as to why they fall for each other is like embroiled passions. Like, something very traumatic happened, and oh my God, this horrible thing happened, and I need to be close to somebody, and boom, there he is. But they don't really portray it like that. They just go like, oh, well, have to have sex now, right? Like, yeah, that's around that time. Boom, we're done. I don't get it. I don't get why she fell for him in this movie. It just felt like an old standby. Like, Bond has to get the girl in the end. That's what this is. That's all it is. But like, it's funny because I understand why Bond would fall for her. The other way around, I don't see it at all, and it just feels like it's rushed and not believable on Swan's side.
I think for me, it starts off with like a potentially interesting dynamic, and then once you get to the part where just they survive almost being murdered by Mr. Hinks, and then it's suddenly, all right, sharp cut to the hotel room. They're taking each other's clothes off. They're making sweet music with each other. It's just like, I think they would probably be a little bit more psychologically exhausted, like, holy fuck, we almost got murdered.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I just think that was really odd. All right, so let's get into spy action.
This movie has action by the spades.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against action. I mean, action movies are fun. What makes a good Bond movie is it's got to have a little bit of thrilling espionage. It's got to have its moments of just being able to kind of sneak in, do some sneaky stuff, and then get the mission done and kind of get one up on the enemy and everything. You have one moment that sort of happens, and that would be the meeting out in Italy and everything, where Bond gets the drop on Lucia Sciarra and kills her assassins, gets the info on where this super secret Spectre meeting is supposed to take place. He goes there, he kind of sits in, spies on the meeting. It's just like, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty thrilling. And then, of course, just Blofeld ends up getting the drop on him instead, putting Bond on the back step. And then immediately just, boom, we're back to action again. And it's a crazy car chase and everything. And again, the car chase scenes are fun. It's an action movie, I get it. But a few spy espionage pieces that are in this movie, they're fun when they happen. But I almost feel like they get drowned out by all the action that happens. I think one of my favorite spy and espionage moments was when they get to the L'American hotel out in Tangiers. Bond is just struggling, going, I don't know what's so significant about this hotel room. Just, I don't frickin' get it. And then he sort of notices that, hey, there might be a hollow wall. And then the minute he breaks open the wall, there's like a treasure trove of information. I thought that was a super cool moment because it just felt like Bond had his back to the wall. Like, okay, I'm at L'American. Supposedly the data to find where Blofeld has taken up a hideout is somewhere in this hotel room, but I've smashed through every cabinet, every nook, cranny, and crevice. And then it turns out that there was a secret hollow wall, and once he smashes it open and he sees this treasure trove, it just felt like just Bond being scrappy again, and it gave me just a slight glimmer of hope of, okay, we're back to Bond being scrappy again. This is great. I have no problem with it. And then after that, it just kind of really dives just real heavy back into the action. And again, it just feels like that one scrappy moment of spy espionage sort of like moments, and just having to use his wits and his senses to figure out a situation. It just feels like it just is gone in a whisper because of just how overpowering the action is.
I agree with you. I think the action is really good. I think it's actually visually spectacular. It's stunning and incredibly well shot. The action, I think, is one of the best parts of the movie. But the problem I have is that there's no dramatic tension at all. Feels like in the other Bond films, again, with the formula, it just feels like we're just waiting for Bond to get the upper hand. Think about the other 3 films that just happened. Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and Casino Royale. What happens? Bond fails. Bond actually messes up. Or he has to, like you said, he has to come up with his own solution. And it makes it more interesting and dramatic. In this one, it just feels like there isn't any emotional stakes at all in those scenes. It just feels like we're just waiting for Bond to gain the upper hand and win. And it becomes less interesting because of that. And that's kind of disappointing to me because the action in the other 3 movies that we've had make it much more of an intense emotional reaction that you get from these scenes. So I think that's one big problem with the action scenes. Again, visually, they look great, and the set pieces are really well done. And I think the one in the beginning is the best one. But they have no emotional resonance because they don't really seem like there is anything thrilling to it. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like you said, lack of espionage, the lack of things that drive the plot forward. It just seems like it's a stop. We need an action sequence, and then the plot's next, which I don't really like in this. All right, so let's get into the theme song and opening credits. The song is Writings on the Wall, written by Jimmy Napes and performed by Sam Smith.
This one's actually kind of a interesting ballad-style song, and Sam Smith's performance is excellent on it. The sequence, it kind of is interesting because it has a lot of old callbacks to some of the previous movies that we had seen. There's a lot of CG that, in some cases, looks a little bit kind of corny and cheesy, in my opinion. It almost reminds me of, like, some of the Brosnan-era stuff. It was just like, yeah, I get it. You're trying to set this up that, this is, once again, another continuation in the Craig saga of Bond and everything. But this could have been a little bit more tightened up. That's just kind of my thought on it.
I have a confession to make. This type of music is actually something I really like. Sam Smith's soulful voice is like, oh, I love this type of music. So right there, you got me. But I really like the song, and it actually kind of fits with the character of the movie in this movie. I actually like the song, and I think it fits incredibly well with the movie. I kind of agree with you on the opening credit sequence. It seems a little corny, but I still think it's stunning. And it also really works with the film, I think, because it's both in like really inky, black, gooey kind of thing with some gold trim around it. I actually kind of like the opening credit sequence as well in this. So I actually thought this was very good. I really like the song as well. It's like one of the few songs from a Bond film that I actually listen to often. Zero, let's get into our conclusions for Spectre. Go right ahead.
This may be a bit of a shock to some people with just how much I've mentioned that the action's great and everything. But I'm going to have to say this is a mission failure because it just seems like it's a massive step backwards in Craig's saga because just the last 3 movies, they've made a very, very, very resilient, scrappy, clever, and very cunning Bond. And then here we are trying to shoehorn in tropes from the Sean Connery era and also some of the Pierce Brosnan era stuff. And then we get to Blofeld, and Blofeld starts off with being potentially a very, very interesting villain, and then it sort of devolves into Saturday morning cartoon supervillainry. On top of that, then one of the big twists is, hey, by the way, I was your adopted brother. And it's just like, oh my God, we're just trying to bram the entire kitchen sink on how corny he is, aren't we? Ugh, Jesus. Lea Seydoux playing Madeleine Swan, she's a beautiful actress in this one. She starts off so interesting. And then with her turning into Bond's love interest, it just feels so forced and hackneyed with the train car scene. They go from being at each other's throats and her having an explicit hate for him because he's technically involved in wet works. And then suddenly, after almost being murdered, boom, we're just going to go and make sweet music in the train car. This is like, you could have worked up to this. This could have been done with a little bit more decency and delicacy, and you guys just kind of threw that to the wind.
It's a mission failure to me as well, and I've stated it a bunch of times in the review. I think this actually sets the entire reboot section of the Bond films back. When you have to say to yourself with a series of films, forget this one exists, that tells you how bad this film is. And I don't think it's the worst Bond film, but it's really up there. And it has a lot to do with the fact that the villain in this movie, which is Blofeld, is so poorly done in this movie. I'm not talking about Christoph Waltz. I'm talking about what they wrote on him. I'm talking about how they characterized him, how they characterized Spectre and everything, and how they just missed the mark on every aspect of this movie. And then the romance part you mentioned with Dr. Swan and everything. I like Lea Seydoux. I think she's a good actress. I think she fits this part well, but I just do not understand why she would also fall for Bond. I definitely understand why Bond would fall for her, absolutely, but I don't get the romance on her end of this. I think this is a very disappointing film, and especially after Skyfall did such a great job with what they were doing in that movie. And another thing also is that they kind of go back to the well and to the formula instead of trying to weave certain things from the Bond that Craig did into it. It just seems like you said, they just take elements of Connery and Brosnan and just said, okay, let's just put that there, and it just doesn't work. So I'm with you. This is a complete failure for me. So mission failure for you, Zero?
Yep, mission failure.
Mission failure for Spectre. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. All right, Zero, so we are at the end of this episode. Before we go, we are going to have next week's episode, and that is going to be the final Bond film for right now. Zero, what is that film?
It is 2021's No Time to Die.
No Time to Die. Well, we already know how we feel about Spectre and the other 3 films that we've done, and this is going to be the final one that we're going to be doing after this. So I know you've seen this, correct? Because I have as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be very curious to how this is watching it again after we went through all the other Bond films. What are you going to look for when watching this movie, if anything in particular?
I think for me, I'm just going to be trying to just see how this one sort of holds up now that we've sort of gone through the entire Bond chronology. When I initially saw it, I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was great, but I have a gut feeling this is probably going to be much worse than I remembered. I'm
actually with you, but I'm going to give it a shot just in case I'm wrong. So tune in next time for the 007 Debriefings, where we review No Time to Die. I'm Intelligence Officer Wiz.
And I'm Weapons Specialist Zero.
Talk to you guys next time. Bye.